Now, join the dots starts, as before, with your buyer. So what do they care about? Well, your buyer, they care about their goals and the direction that they're going in. If they achieve their goals, they're going to get paid, and if they get paid, they're going to be able to feed their family, and if they can feed their family, then that's a good thing. Anything getting in the way of that is going to threaten that individual. What might get in the way of that? Well, problems that this person experiences along the journey can get in the way of these goals. And there's going to be big problems and small problems. And it's up to that individual to overcome these, to achieve these goals. But what affects these problems? Well, of course, the environment that they're operating in affects these problems and how big they are. If that there is our finance manager that we were speaking about earlier, and our finance manager's company is going through perhaps a merger right now, that's a change of environment, that merger is going to make some problems get bigger, which of course the finance manager has to overcome. What else affects these goals? Well, trends, things that are happening in this person's discipline and also in their industry are going to affect how big these goals, these problems are. And as the environment changes and as the trends changes, and over the life of this finance manager here, their problems are going to get bigger and they're going to get smaller. They've got to overcome them. And during that life, at one point, someone's going to come into their life, and that person is a salesperson, and they're going to interrupt that person. And that salesperson has got some products and services to sell. And perhaps the products and services are good at solving red, blue and green problems. So they phone that person up and interrupt them. And of course, you guys are all in inside sales. There will be many different ways of communicating with your buyer here. But a lot of salespeople will essentially, when it boils down to it, will say, hello, I'm Joe from such and such a company. I've got a great product that solves red, blue and green problems. They're the best in the market. Some of our customers have overcome amazing problems with this particular solution. Can I help? And because you're interrupting your customer and because they care about their goals, they often say to you, no, you can't help, I don't care, leave me alone, and reject you. Now, I've been in that situation many times myself. I've experienced that rejection, and many sales gurus and motivational people have said, you've just got to think about it in a different way, Callum. But it doesn't matter for me personally. Every time I get that rejection, it hurts to a certain extent, and maybe that's what's driven me to try and find different ways to talk to my customers. So how could you find a different way to move them from a position where they don't care to a position where they do care? Well, you've got to come at them with something different than a can we help question. You're going to come at them with a story. We call it a cause to act story. Now, if this is in a phone call, there's not much time to do this, so it's just going to be a tiny little chunk of a cause to act story. But of course, to begin with, before you ever make that call, you're going to have to very carefully think about the content of that story. So if you want them to care, what do you know they already care about? Well, you already know that they care about their goals. And you know that things that can stop them achieving their goals are these problems, and you know the environment and trends can affect these. So when you're building the content of your story, and by the way, there you are, you're good at fixing these problems. When you're considering what could be in that story, this is where you have to join the dots. And perhaps you start looking and researching what's happening with this company. Is it going through a merger? Perhaps it is. What are the trends that's happening in this industry? So some content for this particular story might be, so this is the company that you've researched and they're moving into Europe. Part of the content of your story could be about, well, these crazy Brits, they recently voted to exit from Europe, and when that happens, there's going to be a whole lot of changes in legislation, and lots of organisations, their finance function is going to be affected by these changes in legislation. And organisations that are moving into that market could be at risk. So, that's perhaps too long a story, but maybe in your phone call, what you're saying is a boiled down version of that. So you're essentially moving from a situation where you're saying, can we help, to here's some insight. And very clearly, if you do that, you're going to change your customers' focus. So before, they weren't really thinking that much about these problems, perhaps, and your little stories kind of ignited them in their heads. So they've kind of amplified these problems that could get in the way of their goals, which could get in the way of them getting paid, which could get in the way of stopping them feeding their family. So they will indeed care about that story. So that might give you a better chance of getting a meeting or a longer inside sales session to talk to these people. When you build these stories, it's tough to do it on your own. It really needs to be a joint effort between sales and marketing. The people that create the products in your company, it's their job to look at these environments, to look at these goals, to look at these trends. So get together with them, get them to do a Vulcan mind meld and really look from the customer's point of view. Because they're called product marketeers, it's natural that they're just focused on product. But they have to change their mindset and start focusing on problems. They should be called problem marketeers, not product marketeers. And if you can get together with them, you can start to build the nuggets that will make up your story and get that bigger meeting. So here's the bigger meeting now. You've got a bit longer time. You have got a little bit of interest. This number here tells a little bit of a story about these bigger meetings. This is actually talking about qualified pipeline. So this comes from Sales Benchmark Index. And they established that 60% of deals between buyers and sellers today, particularly in the complex selling world, end in no decision. So that's qualified pipeline. So that doesn't really help anyone. So why is that? What's happening? Well, there's your buyer there. There's your seller. Typically at the beginning of this meeting, the seller's been trained to ask loads of questions and try and discover information about the buyer. But very soon, very quickly, usually too quickly, the seller starts talking about the benefits of their solution, benefits of working with them. And that buyer sees these benefits in their mind and says, oh, that's logical. Yeah, I can see why it's a good idea to go with that particular seller, and a little bit of attraction is set up. But then when it's time to make an actual decision, there's a much bigger force operating in the other direction, and it's the bigger force of that buyer's emotional mind that says, hold on a second, that seller's talking about solving problems. You're already solving these problems, or you're at least addressing them. You might not be doing it as beautifully as that seller is talking about, but you're still doing it. And what's more, you never get fired when you were doing it. If you go with that person there, that is a risk. So just stay where you are right now. And that is what causes, or a big driver, to cause this no decision to happen. So how can you overcome that? Well, the reason the buyer doesn't want to move is because they kind of believe they're on solid ground right now. So again, you have to expand that cause to act story, giving more insight, more background behind what's happening in their world. So it's not a story about you and your company. You shouldn't even mention your brand. This is a story about your buyer's world. And if they're going into Europe, well, what's happening in Europe and the laws that are likely to change. And if you do that, then you suddenly make your customer think, I'm not on solid ground at all. It's not safe for me to stay where I am. I must change. I do have to change, and that will set up much more attraction. And then once you've established all that credibility, what's happened is your status has changed from someone who's gasping to sell their stuff to a valuable advisor, and now your customer's much more likely to open up to you. So you can ask your discovery questions at this point, and they're much more likely to share all sorts of problems with you that they might not have shared with some of your competitors. So once you've gathered that information, perhaps in the same meeting, perhaps at a different meeting, you would share your why only you story, which positions your organization as the only ones, or the ones that are best placed to solve the problems that you discovered about your customer. And you're at an advantage because you gave them this insight here, which when you built it was aligned with your red, blue and green fantasticness, your red, blue and green problems that you can solve. So that should be your uniqueness that it's aligned with. But how you position these benefits is absolutely crucial to how your buyer perceives what you're offering. And at this time, Jen, I'd like to go for another poll. Just a reminder there, sales and marketing together work to produce these stories. So here we go. To what extent do you think your sales... this is the wrong question, Jen. Are we able to do the other one that's what do your buyers buy? Have you got that one? If it appears...
Oh, I'm so sorry. I only have the two.
Okay, don't worry. We'll just have to pretend, everyone, that I'm asking you this question. Okay, what do buy... And I'll pretend that I don't know the answer, okay? So you can shout at your screens. So what do buyers buy? Do they buy benefits? Do they buy value? Or do they buy product features? So start typing into your chat box all the answers there. I'll give you a few seconds. At least this way I don't have to wait for ages to hear the answers. So the answers are coming up. Okay, they buy benefits, they buy value. Okay, tremendous. Hey, this is another way of doing it. At least this way I can see all the answers happening. They buy benefits. Most people are saying they buy benefits. Fantastic. Okay, and a few other various things they buy as well. Okay, so you're all right to a certain extent. Now, when I was trained how to sell, and I'm sure it was the same for you guys, I was trained that buyers buy benefits. That was drummed into my head. However, you may be surprised to know that the truth is something different. But this chap here is a guy called Professor Daniel Kahneman. He wrote a fantastic book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. He is a behavioural economist, and he got the Nobel Prize for his work. And what he did was he proved beyond any doubt that people, human beings, are much more likely to want to move away from loss than they are to move towards gain. And most people see benefits in their mind as being a gain. So let's try and frame this, or let's try and explain this in a little bit more detail here. So imagine that's you feeling normal. And look at that, you just put your hand in your pocket when you're watching this webinar and you found $100 that you didn't know you had. How are you going to feel? You're feeling tremendous. So equate that $100 to 100 feel-good units in your mind. Okay, get used to that feeling. Okay, you're back to zero now. You're back to normal. You've not got that extra $100 anymore. This time, you've lost $100. So that's like losing 100 feel-good units. You would have thought that it was kind of the same amount as before. It's the same 100 feel-good units you've lost. But what Daniel Kahneman proved beyond any doubt is in fact that losing, people feel it's much worse. Or they want to get away from it much more than they want to go towards winning. So it's almost like losing 200 feel-good units or even more. Let's look at a little bit of research he did into taxi drivers, cab drivers in New York. Be interesting if any of you live in New York. So this is something he did with the BBC. Daniel Kahneman, who works at Princeton. He's from Israel. Princeton University is at. So what he found was that you would imagine that cab drivers, just like your buyers, you would imagine they would want to maximize their income. And on sunny days, it's quite hard to get fares because everyone wants to walk. But on rainy days like this, it's easy to get fares because everyone wants to jump in a cab. So you think if you want to maximize your income, you would work really hard and long hours on rainy days, and just work short hours or take your leisure on sunny days. But in fact, they do the exact opposite. They are driven by this want, this need to earn a set amount of money. And earning below that certain amount of money, they view as a loss, and earning above that amount of money, they view as a gain. And they care more about the loss than they care about their gain. Now let's try and equate it to your world. Let's just stay on the taxi drivers for a minute. Here they are at the beginning of the day. They're in this losing position. They've not earned any money, but they want to earn their normal $400. So they pick up their first fare. They feel great. They're moved away from the loss. They pick up another fare, another fare. They keep on feeling great until they reach the fantastic goal of normal. They've reached their $400 target, and it's only lunchtime. To get the real gains, they should keep on working, but many of them just go home. They care more about just hitting normal than they do the big bonuses. Now, what do most salespeople talk about? They talk about the benefits. So imagine that's one of your competitors talking about their benefits. And then another one comes in and says, oh, our benefits are a bit stronger than that. And then you come in and say, the benefits of working with us are even better. And your buyer, when it's time to make a decision, looks back in time and says, who's offering me the most value here? It's that one there, but really they all look the same. Which is another reason why people stick with that no decision. What they do is they compare what they think normal is with what they think they could be, where they think they could be, and the difference between the two, they equate to the feeling of value in their mind. So if you go in with your cause to act story and make them realise they're not there at all, everything's not all rosy for them. In fact, because of all the law changes and stuff like that, they're actually down there. And then you talk about the benefits of your offering. When they think about the value they offer, you offer, the differential, the contrast between the two is much, much bigger, and you make it much easier to choose you, or you make it much easier for them to choose you. And again, setting up that contrast is a key role of sales and marketing, working together to be able to show that contrast in a little story. Now we're running out of time, so let's summarize it up here before we hand over to Patrick. So the summary is you need stories. Little procedure earlier on you can see to build your stories. 2 stories. First of all, a cause to act. Makes your customer listen to you and makes them decide, I do have to do something. And then a why only you story that's got that contrast in there that makes all the difference. And instead of just using what you think is the best way to do it or how we're all trained 20 years ago, get some decision-making science in there. Now, I've revealed a little bit of that decision-making science, but there's loads of decision-making science available to you all. Now, I'm not going to go over each one of these books. Here's a little sample of a few that you should read. And if you read that, you'll see how you can build some of that decision-making science into the way that you sell. The world has changed, everyone.